Hi, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on process design, process mapping, and layout planning. And just to give you a quick overview of this topic, we're going to use a quick example where we're first going to look at a process map. Okay, so process maps essentially will lay out all of the steps of a process. So from beginning to end, from A to Z. And although some people will think of a process map from an entire organizational perspective, a process map is for one particular process. So whenever I lay out a process map, I am typically looking for a work stream within an organization. A work stream being how many steps, what are the steps from the time to the customer places the order to the time that I receive payment for that order to cash, right? What for procure, you also could look at it from a procure to pay perspective. So I purchased the product. What are the steps until I receive the product, until I actually pay my AP invoice? Okay, so again, it's processes from a particular work stream. So in this example that we have here, we are looking for at different maps on how to make a pizza, right? So these process maps are used a lot within the manufacturing organization. We're going to walk through a manufacturing process, but we're also going to look at it through a different lens in terms of healthcare. Okay, so as you can see, we have different strategies, and that is where this process design can come in, where you have different processes based on your product, is based on your organizational model. So for example, there's no one size fits all from a process design perspective, even in the same industry. So if I take Ford, for example, Ford's process design is totally different than Tesla's design. Well, now that Tesla is in mass manufacturing, if we look back a year ago, Tesla was in a make to order strategy. So Tesla, they would not make a car until that customer placed the order, right? Until that representative went to that individual's house to perform all of the measurements. Once those measurements were input into Tesla system, then Tesla would make that particular car, right? So that would be, so going to that customer's house and performing the measurements would be a step within this process map. Okay, so if we look at these three strategies, these three approaches, these three as designs, if you will, then you have this make the stock strategy. So this make the stock strategy is I will look at and we'll talk about within in terms of forecasting. So we look at our forecast. So we have our customer demand, we create our forecast, and we see that, okay, now we have to make 500 Fords, for example. So we're going to have a make to stock strategy where we're going to lay out all the steps that have to be done to make a particular item, right? And that is going to be like essentially a make to stock strategy. I'm making all of these Fords, all of these materials. I know some of you are going to argue and say, well, that's an assembly line, but work with me here on this. That it's a make to stock strategy. So you have all the steps that it takes, and you're going to have this repetitive process. You're going to do this make to stock strategy over and over again until you have 500 Fords made, for example, right? 400 iPhones made, for example. So you also have an assemble to order strategy where I could have all of my what we refer to as our semi-finished goods in stock. And I'm essentially, I always say, think of Lego blocks. So my blocks are already there. Once that order comes in for an item, I'm just screwing them in. I'm attaching them together, sending them out, right? So that's kind of a assemble to order strategy. Sometimes that is referred to as semi-finished good process. And then again, you have that make to order strategy where I'll wait for that order to come in. I'll wait for that Tesla order to come in, and then I perform all those steps. So that is that's an example of those three different strategies from a process perspective, and typically those are laid out within a process map so that you identify all the steps in the process. And once you've laid all of these steps in the process out, then we have something we refer to as value stream mapping, where we can put in how long it takes to perform each one of these processes. So it takes this long to perform this process, this long it takes to perform this process, this long it takes to perform this process. But you also will put in how long is the wait time in between each one of these processes. And in doing that, then you can identify any kind of non-value added activities. Then you can also identify any bottlenecks within the process. Okay. And then we'll also talk about, the theories of constraints, where we're going to expose the constraint, we're going to expose the bottleneck, and we're going to eliminate that constraint. So that's how these process maps and value stream maps are very powerful and beneficial to organizations, because they identify areas for improvement. They identify areas of where non-value added activities can be removed from the process. Okay, so in using this example within a healthcare environment, as I know that some of you may be in healthcare, a make to stock strategy. I always use the example in healthcare of flu vaccines, right? So I could say hypothetically, right? I could say that I receive all of my flu vaccines and then I make up all of my vials, right? Because, or let's back up to medication, right? So I know that my patients take these 3 pills every time they come in with the flu, right? I know that they take these every single time, so I'm just going to build up a stock of these 3 pills. So every time a doctor writes in a prescription, every time a nurse writes a prescription for these 3 pills, I just pull them off the shelf, right? So I've built up an inventory, so I'm reducing the wasteful activity of pulling this bottle every single time that order comes in. I just pull a finished good off the shelf and give it to the doctor, give it to the nurse, right? So that the make to order strategy is that one approach where I have to wait, because it is a specialized, a particular symptom where I have to wait for that particular prescription to come in. So that make to order strategy within a healthcare environment is kind of that traditional approach where I have to wait for that prescription to come in, understand what medication I need to fill that prescription, and then I make it, right? So I have to wait for the prescription to come in, then I fill it, okay? They assemble the order strategy. The best thing I can think about here is I have the bottle of powder, right? I have the empty capsules, right? And then once the order comes in, I actually take the powder and fill the capsules, right? So I'm assembling, I'm putting together, again, Lego blocks, right? So I have those semi-finished goods. I take those 2 semi-finished goods together, combine them, I ship it out. So those are examples. I tried my best within the healthcare realm. So if you have any questions about the process design, process maps, value stream maps, and layout plans, because this can also be referred to as a different layout plan, please let me know.